when I got that job, I was really shocked I got it in the first place.
One of the things that you're also very open about is your ADHD.
You know, some people have known to make such tragic kind of decisions of wanting to even end their life. It took a long time to navigate. I didn't know what neurodivergence was growing up. I could tell I was something was different about me. Happiness trap.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea that we're going to be happy. And I think, you know, I have to also reflect on that sometimes, that what am I doing? What is it for? Please don't move me. This is the only place I've experienced as home. Initially, I think that's why I didn't want to go into the field of kind of business initially, because it just felt really scary. It felt too big to, you know, it didn't feel human.
Welcome to Leaders in Disguise, the podcast that dives into the realities of leadership, mental health and resilience. I'm your host, Gary Parsons, and today we've got an incredible guest, Dr Sona Kaur. Dr Kaur is leading in clinical psychology at the National Hospital of Neurology and Neurosurgery, a successful business leader and a trailblazer for neurodivergent individuals. From overcoming cultural barriers to navigating her journey through ADHD, she brings a wealth of insight into thriving with neurodivergence and the importance of breaking stigma. This episode is filled with valuable insights of resilience, navigating mental health challenges as leaders, and the journey to embracing our own uniqueness. So let's get into it then. Hello, Dr Kaur. Great to have you with us. Thank you for coming on Leaders in Disguise. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm good. Thank you very much. I will say this a few times. We're doing a few sessions today. This is our new studio that we're in. So
I love it so far.
We're on equal ground here because it's completely new environment and new for you as well.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
Our debut in London. So thank you for being our exciting debut guests.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Have you had a good day so far?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and you found us okay?
Yes. Took a little bit of navigating, but I'm here now. So.
Do you know, it can be a real challenge. As you know, we've travelled hours down from the Midlands down to here, and I was driving and trying to just look at the roads and figure out where we were getting to, and turning left and turning right, and those slightly impatient drivers that I've noticed culturally here.
In London, definitely.
Yeah, I thought Southerners were, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that political argument here, but quite a challenge. Mm-hmm. So we did it. We were successful. We're here. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
I've got so many notes in front of me. There's so much that we're wanting to talk about. I'm hoping we get through it today. You've been so open and honest, and I really thank you for that, because we spoke just off camera, didn't we, about the challenges that come with leadership and being a leader in so many different worlds. And even I guess in your world there's not an exception there either. We've just said you're I'll look back at my notes again. So you're a clinical psychologist at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery. I'm trying to say that. I did so well earlier. That's an interesting world to be in. How does that feel, being somebody that is such an ambassador for mental health and neurodivergence, to be able to work in an environment like that? What challenges come?
I think it was a real privilege, actually, to be there. After graduating, that was my first job I actually managed to get. So as a psychologist. And originally, I kind of was really interested in working with really disadvantaged groups like refugees and asylum seekers. But there was also a big passion of mine working in neurology. So when you go into the field of clinical psychology, you could work in a diverse range, from dementia patients to neonatals or mental health. And there's so much to kind of cover. So I think maybe growing up, a lot of kind of in the Asian culture and South Asian culture, becoming a doctor or a lawyer was all things that people would want to be. And I think I was generally quite driven by the science. So bringing neuroscience and psychology together, I think that's what led me to kind of maybe apply to that hospital. And when I got that job, I was really shocked I got it in the first place.
It's like a bit of imposter syndrome.
Definitely.
Sometimes. I can't do this, but look how well you are doing.
Exactly. It's such a renowned, hospital. And I didn't know much about epilepsy. That's the department I work in. and it was a new role when it was setting up this kind of new service as well. And I felt quite, out of depth. But my kind of supervisor was great in kind of coaching me and getting me to where I am. But yeah, quite early on, I remember when I was studying, one of my supervisors in my studies asked me a very interesting question. And she said, how is it that your thesis, your kind of main area of research is with undocumented migrants? However, your kind of specialism is in neuropsychology. And I was really taken back by that at the time. And I went away and it's like when you go to therapy, you feel kind of, gosh, I didn't know that question was coming. You kind of, but yeah, so I think I went away and reflected on that comment as to actually why has my heart always been wanting to help kind of disadvantaged or individuals who are really struggling with their mental health, who are maybe not seen, whereas actually why am I kind of trying to specialise in something which is quite medicalised? And I think on reflection, I think it came back to being somebody who doesn't come from a family who is very kind of highly educated in lots of different areas. My mum was a homemaker. My dad did lots of kind of labouring jobs growing up, kind of only finished college. And I think growing up, I felt that to be seen was to become the doctor, lawyer, business owner. And I think being someone of colour as well was something that was it was challenging, because to be seen in my academics as a person, it comes with its own challenges. But so I think, my thesis and my studies wanted to work with people who are undocumented, which basically are individuals who are living in the UK without any citizenship. And I think that's where my heart lies. So I wanted to kind of get support for them to be able to access the NHS for their own mental health. But I felt why I probably chose the road of the medical neuro, because there was something about it which was quite superior. And I felt if I was to graduate, if I said, I'm a leader in a refugee kind of, I don't think I would be seen as much as when people hear I work at the National Hospital of Neurology, suddenly ears are saying, sorry, is that where you work? And it's interesting because, I think that's what made me lead to that, because I thought in order to give people with mental health difficulties a voice, I have to be seen first myself. And I think that is what kind of pushed me towards such a kind of, I started to apply for the best hospitals, and I didn't shy away from that. And I thought, I want to see where this takes me. And I was even, applying for jobs that were above my pay grade, because I was just a new graduate. And I was invited for an interview, and the interviewees were asking me, why are you here? I thought, well, you've invited me.
Absolutely.
So
I'll tell you why I'm here. Yeah, absolutely.
And it was interesting, because the first interview I went was at the same hospital for a different department. It was an 18-bedded kind of for people with brain injuries. And I didn't get the initial job at that point, but they called me a month later and said we were so impressed by the interview, but that was kind of for leading the whole kind of service. But we would like you to come in and, view the hospital and see if you like, because there's another job ad coming out. And she said, you performed so well for somebody who had just kind of graduated. And I hadn't graduated at this point. I was still prematurely applying for these jobs. But it was just by sod's law that I managed to, get a job at this place. And I think
incredibly well, though, haven't you?
I think so.
You're probably the second person of recent times that have said to me they went for an interview. I think it was one of our guests talked about turning up a day early for an interview. And it was a different job, and she did really well, and they called her back in the same way. So I think there's a pattern emerging here. I think we've now hit onto the formula of getting into some really successful places. But you've just mentioned there that you hadn't graduated. So again, that imposter syndrome is there. Did that pressure from yourself, from the family, to be able to do well and perform well in those roles and those interviews?
My parents never, I think traditionally, now I know more of how our communities, as I've got older, looking at cousins and families and extended families, there is a pressure to perform. But my immediate family didn't. Like my parents didn't ever push me. My dad slightly did. I think he was, but I don't think even now reflection, I think the grades felt that, he didn't want me to fail. And he was, one of the, came here in his in the 1950s. It was a real struggle. And I think because he was out in the workplace, he could see what would happen if you didn't survive, if you didn't keep your head above water. Whereas my mum was a homemaker, so I think she was quite protected in some ways. So my dad would be pushing me a bit more to be able to succeed to something that I don't think he had even seen himself. But my mum was more saying, when you go to, you study, try to concentrate on enjoying your studies rather than passing your grades. And I think for me, that pressure was more, came later on, when other people in, my studies could, like the teachers, would name me as gifted and talented in school. And when they could see my potential, I think that's when I started to kind of question, what is it that they could see in me that I couldn't see in myself? And I wasn't, very studious or academic growing up. I was free to be, who I wanted to be. But yeah, when teachers would point me out and say, gosh, you've got real strength here, or you've got real strength here, that's when I wanted to really hone into that. Every teacher would say the same thing. They said, it's all there, but the confidence, it's almost like you can't see your own potential. And we can see it. And this is what you could do. And the same happened when I went to university. In my second year, they said, oh, gosh, you've got the potential to get a first. And I thought, gosh, this is way beyond something that I could achieve. And that's when I started to knuckle down and thought, is this possible for me? Then I'll put my head down and actually do this, because I didn't know I had this potential to begin with. But once I knew it was there, I wanted to fulfill that, to ensure that I could reach my maximum potential, so that I could be a credit. For me, it's my parents, my siblings, and for our generation, and to be a woman of colour, to be able to show other people that it's possible.
To do. There's so inspirational already. I'm sitting here in awe of you. I just realised I've still got questions to ask you, but it's so inspiring what you're saying there. Like you say, particularly as a person of colour, having that pressure from that community to achieve these things. But you've done it. It sounds like you've done it for yourself, but you've also done it for family, and you said there for cousins and for siblings, etc. When I was looking through notes and preparing for today, one of the things that you're also very open about is your ADHD. You describe that as a superpower. Now, many people will see a stereotype of ADHD as somebody that doesn't do very well, that certainly doesn't get first degrees, let alone do well in school. But you've really owned that superpower. Has that influenced now how you see neurodivergence, and you do a lot of work in that area?
Yeah, I think it does. I think initially it's, as much as we use the word superpower, I don't want to, minimize how challenging it can be to have such diagnosis, and obviously depending on, how severe it is for some people. But there's also an element that I like to shine light on for a lot of individuals, that as much as our brains are wired differently, it doesn't mean we are disordered in a way that, we can't look at the strengths and work on those and maximize those. So when I talk about superpowers, I think it's a word that's used quite commonly now, and I think for some people it can really feel that their challenges can be minimized. So I definitely don't want to portray that. Yeah. But there's huge people when I'm kind of assessing for autism and ADHD, any difference, and we can find an area that we can do well in, and I think that's what I want to kind of advocate for, is that we can shine light on those areas and make them even better. So that's, I think, something that I know in my journey, it took a long time to navigate. I didn't know what neurodivergence was growing up. I could tell I was something was different about me. I would do subtle things, which I now know is called masking, to kind of hide those areas that I thought would be seen as unacceptable, being fidgety or wanting the need to stand up or move around, or I would interrupt people when I'm talking. So there are things I've now learned how to manage better. But it didn't come easy. I think I learnt the hard way. And I think now I'm at a platform that hopefully I'll be able to be a voice for other people, to be able to, for employers or educators to see, young people or children in schools, to not just see them as naughty children or, trying to see what's behind the behaviour and understand their little minds a bit better, so that they can express themselves as well, rather than feeling that they're being shut down.
One of the things that I've seen, particularly with the ADHD movement, I guess that's, again, trying to use the right words here, so forgive me if they're not, but there's certainly the ADHD movement and autism as well. So many people have had that, and we'll get into that co-occurrence later on, but so many people have started to see that, but such a late age, 20, 30 years after they've been at school and they've experienced those challenges. It must be quite difficult for somebody that is, I'm the grand old age of 41 now, and I keep saying that and feel like it's fast approaching 50 at the moment, the way I carry on. But certainly trying to adapt at that age, it must be hard for people to acknowledge that difference. And I've had friends, colleagues that have suddenly gone, oh, I am different. This is why I've been doing these things. So when did you find out that you had ADHD?
I think it was through my studies. I think that was that self-discovery. And I think that's why I was probably more drawn to it, because the more individuals I would meet that was similar to me, I'm naturally drawn to neurodivergent individuals because they seem to be more understanding of how I was as a person. So yeah, I definitely do think it's a journey for many people, but I'm glad I do know, so that I can accept and embrace that difference, rather than trying to minimize it and feel like I'm hiding a big part of who I am.
When you officially had that diagnosis, and I'm sure you now, as you said, you're talking to people like having that diagnosis for the first time. Let me reword this. There's people that get that diagnosis and they are shocked and overwhelmed, and it's quite a lot to take in. And there's people that go, yeah, I know it. Yeah, that's fine. It's not going to bother me whatsoever. Which side of the fence, it sounds like you weren't surprised by it. But how, from your experience and certainly your qualifications and work experience, how can people navigate that when it does feel a little bit overwhelming, when they are seeing that word difference as a negative thought? Because you've so lovely the way that you've spoken about it and said it's a difference, it is a superpower, let's not invalidate it. But how can people not be scared of that word different?
I think first, I've never been formally diagnosed, because I diagnosed self-diagnosed, so that's important to mention. But your question around how do people kind of manage the difference, I think even when I speak to some parents, when I'm giving kind of feedback, a lot of parents will say, oh my goodness, they would break down crying. And I can understand that, for some it's taken such a long time to get to the point of diagnosis. It's about accessing help. For some individuals who are maybe more kind of adults being diagnosed, they think, gosh, finally I know, and it can be a cry of relief. And it was always, for me as a clinician, trying to work out, is this a cry of relief? And it's mixed emotions a lot of people have. And for some people, I always tell them that post that diagnosis, it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, where it's going to take time to get to the point of accepting where they are, in the sense of, there's things that they look back at and think, gosh, now that makes sense. And there's going to be those pivotal moments where they're going to be sat there thinking, oh my goodness, I could have done that differently. And there'll be points when they feel really low about, gosh, that challenge, if only I reached out. Or, some people have known to make such tragic kind of decisions of wanting to even end their life. They get to the point they're feeling so low that, they're feeling so isolated in their thoughts that they feel the only way out is, looking at ending their life. Whereas when they hear that they've got a diagnosis, some people can then start to make sense of themselves better, and navigate their own mental health in a better way by seeking help or using medication as an option. So I think it's just, when we talk about difference, I don't think difference is how every individual, it's like when they say, autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Someone with autism is very different to another person you meet with autism. Everyone's so different. And the same as neurotypical individuals. Everyone's individual. And I think that's what, when you talk about difference, is just embracing who we are as individuals, rather than, there's a dichotomy between neurotypical and neurodivergent. It's just, we're different. Everyone should be able to embrace, and there's lots of, it's kind of multi-layered. It's our gender, our age. There's so many different things that we need to be considering when we talk about difference. But for sure, I think people, if they're feeling that they're navigating, they're struggling with that, sometimes getting therapy or getting external support, speaking to their GP and getting extra help can help navigate that, so that they can come to terms with those difficulties and differences, work on the challenges, and hopefully, we have the ADHD coaches as well to help strengthen the kind of areas of strength.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see so many strengths that come with, and it was a huge campaign around, I think it's made with dyslexia, I think. I'm trying to remember the terminology now, and I've seen that just got bigger and bigger over the last month, I think. And that's people with dyslexia. You've got Richard Branson coming out and saying, "Oh, I have dyslexia. Look at what it's done for me." There we are. Yeah, look at what it's done for me. Look at what I can now do. Look at what, and I experienced dyslexia as well. And I go, yeah, wow, the way that I think about things that other people don't like, it's phenomenal. So I absolutely, I think there's a guy called Alex Partridge who very openly talks, Lad Bible founder, openly talks about the positives that come with ADHD. And I think, yes, if we can start to change that language and start to change that mindset and use that word difference as a positive and not a negative, because you just said we're all different, whether you're male or female, or whether you have ADHD or dyslexia, or whether you don't have those, we're all different in so many ways. We wear different clothes, that we are uniquely ourselves. And I think my own non-professional experience of it is, or my personal opinion, is to embrace that.
Exactly.
And absolutely say, like you said there about the spectrum of it, is owning you, and you do you, I'll do me. Yeah,
absolutely.
One of the things that I keep seeing, and it ties in nicely actually, is that you've led so many different initiatives which really made me smile, and you clearly care about supporting others. Have you faced burnout yourself, and how do you manage that, being in a certainly an environment where you are making sure that everybody else is okay, but often we forget about looking after ourselves?
Which is a very interesting question. I think, yes, I do experience burnout, and I laugh with my friends about it actually, because I always say I have scheduled burnout days in my diary, because if they look at my calendar, it's completely full of, the little dots in the Apple calendar where I'm completely, scheduled up. And my PA even says, where do we fit this next kind of, email that's come through? They want your time here, and she doesn't know where to fit me in. So we often joke about it. But I think it's a real kind of experience I have, and I recognize it better now. But it's something that, I think it's something I continue to work on. It's not something I've mastered of how to manage it. As much as I work with others who are struggling with that, and I'm very honest with them as well. It was only this morning I was speaking to another individual, about their struggles and their anxieties, and and overworking, and the kind of world we live in now, we're on this rat race. We're all trying to achieve these goals. And I always tell people, look, even at the end of our therapy sessions, there's no kind of miracle cure. Life is actually really difficult. And you may have heard of the book, The Happiness Trap.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea that we're going to be happy. And I think, you know, I have to also reflect on that sometimes, that what am I doing? What is it for? And sometimes we have to kind of, I always give the analogy of like a car. We have to park our car and reanalyze, is this still where I want to go? Is this the destination where I need to be? And if it's not, it's still okay to change direction. Yeah. There was a wonderful kind of, I think it was a quote or something, or a meme I saw, where it talked about the longer you stay on a train, you know, the more expensive that journey will become. And I think it's so true. It made me think about that. We all need to step off of that at points and, reflect. Is this the direction? Is this the route I want to be taking? And if it's not, it's okay. And it doesn't matter at what age, at what time we come off of that train sometimes and reflect. It's just important that we do. Because I run the businesses I do. I'm also a single parent. There's so many different hats I have to wear, be a mum, a sister, a daughter, a business owner. I have to be the manager. I have to be so many different roles in the space of one day. I'm only human.
Absolutely.
And there's days that I just think, gosh, I don't know, and I don't even have a weekend. I often work because when you run a business, you're never not working. I could be on holiday and people are expecting you to respond to emails and you can't shut off. So, I recently went away with a friend and she has a lovely 9-to-5 job, and I envy the 9-to-5 job at times. Yeah. Where, she's like, a lot of people say, I look forward to Friday and the weekends. And I think, gosh, I just don't have that. It's only when I'm physically on a plane and if they don't have Wi-Fi, I'm free from people emailing me. But yeah, I do struggle with burnout, and it's a real thing, and it's a real challenge, and it's something I'm trying to work on.
Every day is a school day. Every day you learn.
Exactly.
I recognise that. As you know, I think I'm a business mentor, so I work with lots of businesses, lots of business owners that have been running businesses for years, and they really want to get on top of their life-work balance, as I consciously call it. And that is a real challenge for many people. And they're so, especially when they've got multiple businesses, and we'll get into that in a moment, because I think there's some real interesting links there. And I love that analogy you've spoken about the train there, because we do get caught up in it. We get caught up in the moments and the theatre of it sometimes, and what's going on, or the pressures that we, whether that's family or friends or husbands or wives, or just what we decided we wanted to do, we get caught up in that own pressure. And we do need to get off. We do need to get off, to check where we're going, reset, get back on the train and go somewhere else for a change, or carry on. And it's all about growing the businesses and the things that you're wanting to do, and letting yourself grow at the same rate, and slow down if you need to slow down, which ties in very nicely, because I wanted to talk about some of those initiatives, and comes from a place of passion, these passion initiatives that you're doing. Tell me about some of the proud moments that I was reading and learning about before coming through today. You've got a home that is looking after the people with ADHD. I'll let you describe it much better than me. It sounded amazing.
So I run a children's home now, and for children with emotional behavioural challenges. That's something that has taken a long time to kind of set up, but it's finally flourishing, and the young people are doing really well. So that's something that's been a new kind of business venture and a personal kind of passion. I was a support worker myself a long time ago when I was, navigating the world of psychology and therapies. So now I'm kind of more on the leadership side of that, and trying to embed a therapeutic kind of home where, having a more of a systemic approach where the kind of staff and are all working therapeutically. So rather than one person just coming in as a therapist, and which sometimes is still needed on a one-to-one basis for the young people, but actually I try to kind of I don't want to locate problems in people, and actually want to work systemically where we can all think about these young people and hold them in mind so that we can have kind of an amazing difference to them, rather than just saying, you've had an awful history and now you're going to have to pay the price for that and we need to fix you, because people are not there to be fixed. And I think it's important that we can nurture each other, and it can be children, adults. I'm a great believer of just being, in villages, this is how people, they don't have therapists. In villages, they talk to each other. Now we have, a world that we have to pay somebody to talk to, because the world can get so lonely at times, which is so sad. But yes, for these young people, I thought, why not develop, a home where we can all hold the children in mind, where from support worker to the cleaner that comes in, I prep them as well. We talk to them about it. I want everyone to be on board so that we can start to change our thinking on a systemic level, rather than, we just come in and do things and then we leave.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way. And I think we can only make that change, I thought, by actually starting something small. I know it's a very small change, but it's starting somewhere.
And for how I understand it, so these are young individuals that the system, if let's call it that for ease, don't necessarily accommodate those. And you've taken individuals with quite complex needs that and turned quite a lot around. Is there one moment, one story that you can tell us? And obviously I appreciate the anonymity of it, but is there one moment that you've seen real success where you've been able to help a certain individual?
Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt, there was a young girl that lives with us now, and she was somebody who was so used to not sleeping on a bed, something as a basic privilege for us on a daily basis we don't think about. And when she moved into the home, she would huddle up behind the door, and we kind of see the light underneath the door, and you could just see that she wasn't sleeping on the bed, and she was very kind of resistant to help. And over time now, it's only been a matter of 6 to 7 months. She now sleeps on a bed. She makes her own bed. She has a little office space for her. She goes to school full time. And she wrote on her, she wanted a little board on her wall so she could put a visual timetable of her kind of week. And she could hear in the background some stories happening around, because of her progress. The world of social care, when they see progress, they will say, right, it's time for you now to move again. And, and understandably, there's, I can understand the system, the costings, there's so many factors to consider, but it comes down to the level of care we're providing is what is it's an interesting topic in itself. But she obviously had overheard some of the conversations that were happening and felt at threat again. And she wrote a message on the board kind of saying, in the best way she could, please don't move me. This is the only place I've experienced as home. And I think that was a real big moment for me, because coming into this business, I've always seen this as being businesses I always see as being run by men, especially like children's homes and things like that. And I thought it's something I can't do, because the red tape just kind of always would put fear in me. But then as I was moving on in my career, people would say, look, this is a great thing that you could do. This is something you've always wanted to do. But I've always just been, my anxiety got in the way. But actually now looking back, I think that is what I did it for. And, being able to make that real difference. And that's, for me, that's credibility, to be able to see that even if it's one person's life I'll be able to change. I thought I'll take that risk. And if I look back one day and think, I packed my business up because of whatever reason, I would say, well, it was worth it, because for somebody that made a huge difference.
It sounds an incredible story, especially as neurodivergent individuals, I know I've seen it in textbooks, whereas nobody likes change anyway, especially neurodivergent individuals, and having that and seeing such amazing progress, that must have been a real moment of joy, but also a little bit of, I'm trying to find the right word here, but challenge in your own mind, because you're so emotionally invested, I guess, at the same time, as well as a business person. That must be a really tough business.
Absolutely. I think it's just trying to find that balance of being able to be the leader and being the business owner, and also, switching hats at times where you have to be more therapeutic. But I think, if anything, it's an advantage. So I can see both ends of the spectrum to be able to ensure that the business is running to the best of its ability and it's therapeutic, but also providing a safe space for the young people and holding them in mind in maybe in a very different way to maybe another business owner would, who doesn't maybe have that psychological background.
It's an interesting phrase, and you're absolutely feeding my questions perfectly over here. The terminology of business owner, leader, I appreciate in one role that you are a leader, you're leading that team, you're in the hospital, that's great. How do you find that transition between, and what do you refer to yourself as in these other initiatives? And I don't think we've got time to go through them all today, but in that one initiative with that service that you provide, are you a business owner? Are you a leader? How are you managing that mindset change?
I think it's something that maybe as being a female, we're quite used to, changing those hats. I just refer to myself as Sona, and I think it's just me. And I don't quite know how I blend all those roles, but I think I do them pretty well. And like when people say, "Oh gosh, you're a therapist, so you must be the most amazing mother ever," and I think, gosh, until you become a mum, you don't realise the challenges. And likewise with the business owner, and likewise with when you're a therapist, until you're in that role. I think I'm just good at kind of shifting into that gear and being what I need to be in that moment in time. And I think that's when the burnout comes out, because you're shifting gears so many times, which is a real quality I think I have as someone with ADHD. And I think that's what kind of makes me who I am, because I can quickly go into kind of business mode and work into, financially what is viable and what makes sense, and how to kind of, sit with people and teach or lecture. And I can easily turn into, being able to sit with somebody and allow them to take their space and, empower them to take charge and ensure that I don't, that power imbalance isn't there where I'm overpowering them. So I think that's a real skill I have. But yeah, I could just probably only say that I'm just me, and I try to do my best in doing that. But coming back to your burnout question, I think it's important that I find time for myself, because I'm somebody who probably does spread myself out quite thinly to ensure that, I'm catering for everybody's needs.
Absolutely. And I think the answer to that question, perhaps I'm sensing, and I could be entirely wrong here, is you happen to own that business. You're a leader. You're leading that change, leading that positive mission that you're on. You just happen to own it.
Yes.
Maybe that's the right. Yeah, that's how it feels from my side of things, which is absolutely means you're doing it right from my eyes. Anyway, it sounds great. And I wonder, just touch on that burnout story again. In the profession and the experience that you've got, you must see colleagues burning out, sadly, all over the place. Where is the support system for somebody in your position, one as a business owner, but two as a clinician? Where do you go to? Who supports the supporters? Who looks after the people that are looking after everybody else?
I think one thing that we definitely, is recommended is our own supervisions. Somewhere we can have a space where we can share how we're feeling, how things are going, having that space to reflect. And then we've also got the peer supervision. And sometimes it's not always that paid supervision. It's the, being with somebody else who's in a similar, they're also in a similar profession, and we can talk to each other about those challenges. And there's something quite therapeutic in that. Not only is there growth and learning, but there's also a lot of, sharing how we're feeling in that moment. So it feels like a therapy session at times when we're talking to another peer, whether it be another business owner or another entrepreneur or another therapist. That peer supervision definitely is important, and I recommend, and I'm hoping that most therapists and business owners do that. Networking groups as well. I do go to a networking group. I think that also helps, where we can I talk to other females who run successful businesses to be able to share the sides that, I couldn't share with friends who are not in a similar field to me, or other colleagues that are not, who might be maybe in a 9 to 5 job. It can feel really isolating and lonely. So it's important that you start to connect with other people that are in similar situations. They're not on your journey, but they're in, their own kind of ships, and we get to communicate with each other in that way.
And I agree with you. I remember years ago I sat down and we looked at the values of the business that I owned and still own, and we looked at how we improve ourselves and how we develop ourselves. And in big writing it said build a support network around you. And it's hard when you walk into those rooms. Like, a question I was going to ask you is around stigma. Even in your world, does it feel like there is a stigma around mental health when you are needing to be at the top of your game, when you are looking after other people, or is it just acknowledged that you will experience challenges in your own life?
I think that stigma does exist. I think there's a very, especially with business owners, I think there's a real performative side to it, because we can't be seen as weak. We can't be seen as not being able to be, adequate in what we're doing. And you need to show up, and you need to, because people are relying on you, and, you're leading the ship. So they need to, they want direction. They need someone to be able to follow. But sometimes that leader too gets tired. So that support network is, like you said, really important. And I think also to be quite boundaried as well. As time goes forward, I think ensuring that people that are on that journey with you, whether it be friends, family, support networks, that they are encouraging, they're supportive. And there might be times when we have to, cut individuals or scenarios out that might not be serving us anymore. And that's okay. As we're shaping and, growing as a person, there will be times when those things don't fit our values anymore. So that change is also challenging. But I think when you have that support network around you, you can feel more assertive to be able to mold into, what you want to be.
I think it certainly builds trust, I found, by opening up and saying, look, I am struggling. And there's a phrase I always, that I've learned recently, to be fair, is to speak from the wound and not from the, I'm trying to remember the phrase now, it's gone out of my head entirely. Speak from the scar, not the wound. There we go, that's the phrase. And I think this, you say there, the boundaries, there's things that we probably still need to process in our own mind, on our own space, with the people that we're really close to, that we can trust, that we can work with. But when that scar, when it starts to heal and we start to feel more empowered to talk, that's when we can start talking about these stories and say, I've gone through this, I'm much better than where I was. And yeah, that you absolutely hit the nail on the head when you said boundaries, because I think that links to that.
And I think it's important to be kind of genuine and authentic. And I think, initially, I think that's why I didn't want to go into the field of kind of business initially, because it just felt really scary. It felt too big to, it didn't feel human. And I think now going into that world, I can see, it's not without anxieties, but with the right support, and you can still be your authentic self. And the type of, a lot of people ask, what kind of type of leadership style do you carry? What do you, and I think you have to be able to shift and transition is what makes a good leader. At certain points, sometimes people need direction. Some people need to be listened to. Some people need to be empowered. We have to be able to mold ourselves to be able to know what we need to deliver. What's the kind of ultimate goal we're trying to reach here? But yes, I think, like you said, it's really important to be boundaried and to be authentic and to share our own difficulties, and not see that as a weakness. Because if we can share that, then we're empowering other people to say, look, it's not perfect. It's not, it's always going to be amazing. It's going to come with its challenges, but it's possible. And I think that's what makes it more relatable to people, so that they can come out of their shell and talk about these difficult situations. Because like I said, running a business can feel really isolating and really lonely. And when you go to like these networking groups or talk to other people, you then feel that, gosh, actually, other people are feeling really similar to me, and I'm not losing my mind. And
if we're honest and we're authentic and we tell these stories,
you know, and I think that helps everyone's mental health in that moment. You know, sometimes I walk away from those networking groups thinking, gosh, I've learned so much, but I also feel like, you know, weights come off my shoulders because there's somebody else that is experiencing something similar to me. And there's something quite profound about sharing something with someone who says, gosh, I feel the same as you. Because, you know, I can tell my other friends, but when they're, you know, they might be in teaching roles or police officers, or it's different. And when I share with, you know, the entrepreneurs or the businesses or the therapists, I feel connected with them. So yeah, I definitely kind of think it's important to share our own vulnerabilities and difficulties with people. So, you know, as your podcast is taking off that mask at times, and it's okay to be you. You don't have to always be pretending. Even though I know those roles can serve us well, but we also have to have a space where we can share how we feel.
Absolutely. You've got so many things for the future. You've spoken very openly about mental health support, making it more accessible. It's an absolute passion of yours. I can hear it. Can you tell us about the future? What goals and what you're hoping to achieve going forward? What is your vision?
I think helping more children would be something I want to kind of do if I can, and you know, continue to build more children's homes, or even consult and help other children's homes of maybe thinking more systemically. And also when it comes to the areas of kind of neurodivergence, being more of a voice for individuals to be able to not only focus on, because I think our systems are very reactive. You know, if something goes wrong, then we contact the NHS, or if you've got a mental health problem, then you go there. Whereas I would like to kind of advocate that it's schools and the systems that we live in, that we're more proactive. So before we even get to that point, if we notice that this could be a challenge, you know, it's like mental health first aid. Why is that not taught in schools as a basic? Or for me, that's beyond me. Why it's not? You know, or
I can see bits changing in that world.
Yeah,
I've seen
there is some subtle changes.
Ben West, who's particularly active in that world,
Yes,
is trying to change that
exactly.
as well.
And I think that's what we need to do, is be more proactive. That if, you know, like some more high functioning neurodivergent, you know, young people or adults, they don't get seen as much as well, because their other cognitive kind of faculties almost can help mask the challenges. They go unseen. They're seen, you know, in a classroom of 30. It's understandable. The teachers won't focus on the kids that are doing well. They're focusing on the children who are disruptive or not doing so well. So then what happens to their superpowers? What happens to the kids that are actually amazing at doing maths, but they don't want to read, or they don't want to do all the other things, but they're so fantastic at one area? I feel like we should hone into those things. So I think just being a voice for more individuals, and when it comes to, you know, entrepreneurs and people of colour, you know, that it's possible, that these achievements. But as I go down the line, I think it would be important that I have an exit strategy. because at some point I think that burnout will, you know, it's something that I have to factor in as a business owner, for my own mental health, of, you know, there's only so much one can do. And I think then ideally I would like to kind of share that knowledge, but on a business perspective, how to kind of tie that up in a way that it doesn't impact me for the negative. So there's a bit of a plan going forward, I think.
Sounds exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing just those changes and how big this could go. And certainly the world is absolutely in favour of the causes that you are so passionately leading, which is brilliant. We've kind of run out of time though, I'm afraid, which is flying by really quickly. And I always sit here and think people don't want to listen to me talking for hours, but maybe they do. One message that I wanted to just get from you, one takeaway that our listeners, the people that are watching, can take away in the professional world about neurodivergence. I ask that question again, what takeaway, and supporting employees and particularly leaders, how can we make that change to support and embrace and see the world of neurodivergent leaders and hopefully change the world in the economy, etc.?
I think supporting individuals who, when they come into the workplace, asking people, as a leader, looking at people's strengths, asking people what their strengths are, and then trying to kind of, support them further, giving them access. It could be subtle changes that one can make in the workplace that could help someone thrive so much. From make like noise cancelling headphones, for example, or dimming the lights if someone's finding it a struggle, or having a space where they can kind of have an employee support line. So they're kind of avenues that people can access to get support. And I think, like you said, that has to come from the leaders. That has to come from the people that are running that ship to be able to advocate and be that voice for other individuals that are there. So I definitely think, for individuals and, to be more open to recruiting neurodivergents, because there's real skills there. They might not always be a forward-facing, a customer salesperson, but they could have, brilliant at coding or make another platform. So they're skills that are maybe unseen, and they might not be demonstrated that well in the interview process. So I think, having more opportunities where people can trial a job, different avenues of trying to see people's successes rather than, just having a face-to-face contact with an individual. And if they have maybe autism, they might struggle with something like eye contact. So I think, just going beyond and, the questions that we have on a sheet of paper for an interview, just going beyond that a little bit and being able to support individuals, and fully and wholly rather than just following a script.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for an inspiring conversation. You've given us so many stories and insights, and just getting to know you has been great. And the work that you're doing is making a real difference. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for coming along. We absolutely need to keep an eye on what you're doing. How can people find you? And do we just type in your Dr Sona Kaur into so Sona and Kaur?
That's right.
Do we just type this into Google, on LinkedIn?
Absolutely, yeah. And then they'll be able to find me, and on Instagram, serenity_Dr Kaur. And reach out, and if anyone's got any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them where possible.
Brilliant. We'll include those on the show notes so people can see those as well. So that's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you. Of course, there are people listening and watching, and they might have questions, they might have ideas, they want to share their own experiences. So for everyone that's listening and watching, I'm going to put a call out to you as well. If you want to be on the show, you want to sit in the chair here, whether it's in London or in Derby, wherever we might be filming, if they want to pay for flights, I'll go anywhere. Most places. I absolutely will go there. We'd love to be able to have more guests on to tell stories like yours that are so inspiring. So if you can send an email through to myself and the team, it literally is hello@leadersindisguise.com. So that's hello@leadersindisguise.com. Thank you very much for coming on a journey with us, Dr Sona Kaur. And let's remember to keep pushing those conversations forward. Stay well, look after yourself. We'll see you next time. Thank you.